I usually don't care about people making ridiculous bad faith attacks against me. It is what it is. I'm busy. I don't want to spend much time defending myself on my own show when I could be sharing the news with you guys. But I really couldn't resist this one.
I had this debate with Ana Kasparian. Yeah. Obviously, when the 12-day war was going on, I'd said, I'm like, I think you got to give him a chance. I don't think this becomes a forever war. And she adamantly was like, yes, it does. And you're wrong. And I was like, all right, if it turns out not to be, will you eat your words? Yes. Do you think that day has come?
Bitch, are you high? Are you high? Like, where have you been over the last few weeks? A US strike on Iran was imminent last week. Luckily, it didn't happen, and I'll get to why in just a moment. But to argue that this potential regime change war with Iran is over, it really sounds like something an oblivious fitness guru would say, while talking to Dave Rubin of all people, of course. So you want to play? Let's play. Let's play. Because we could have had this debate, on the show we used to host together, the one that you ran away from live on air because you couldn't, debate me and decided to run away instead. But nonetheless, we live in hell. So again, like, how do you not know what's been going on over the last few weeks? So I'm gonna respond to a video that was put out by the channel Actual Friends. And in this video, you have Dave Rubin, Jillian Michaels, and I think Drew Pinsky was also part of it, although he didn't annoy me nearly as much as Jillian's clueless commentary did. And I mean, look, I think making fun of Dave Rubin and how brain dead he is just, it's useless. Everyone knows it. There's really no point. But when it comes to Jillian, again, if you wanted to debate me on these issues, you had an opportunity and you ran away from it. So I'll just respond to your video here. So in it, she brings up a clip from the debate we had last summer, right before Trump decided to strike Iran's nuclear facilities. And I kept saying in that debate over and over again, this isn't just about Iran's military capabilities. This isn't just about Iran obtaining nuclear weapons. In fact, we had a nuclear deal with Iran, which prevented Iran from building nuclear weapons. It allowed members of the international community to check and make sure that they're not building nuclear weapons. But Trump ripped it up because it's not about preventing the nuclear weapons from being obtained. It's about regime change. The nuclear weapons, much like the war in Iraq and the weapons of mass destruction that we didn't find in Iraq, it's the excuse to go to war to spur regime change. But I get it. This has been my interest for decades, for literally decades. I went to school for this. I'm not trying to brag about credentials. I don't think they matter at all. But to go to school for it, it means that I've been passionate about this for literally decades. And the thing about political commentary or analysis is that you're very shaky at first because you don't have much to recall. You get what I'm saying? But when you've been doing it for many, many years, when you've been doing it for now 2 decades, you build this library of knowledge about a particular issue. In this case, I know a lot about our conflict with Iran and what's motivating our conflict with Iran. I was reading about this kind of stuff when Jillian Michaels was on The Biggest Loser. Was she reading about what's going on in Iran? I doubt it. Okay. So anyway, she brings up a clip from the debate that we had last summer, and let's take a look at that.
When we inevitably get dragged into this war, when we inevitably end up spending tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions, if not $1 trillion, depending on how long that war with Iran lasts, will you guys come back on this show and at least admit I was right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Conversely, though,
what's the question? Say it again.
Within 6 months,
yep,
and Iran is defanged in the Abraham Accord. This is a pipe dream. I get it. But if it ends within 6 months, Iran is defanged. I don't know if there'll be a regime change. I have no idea. I haven't heard talk of that yet. Obviously, I know that we wouldn't be hearing that because nobody is for that. In fact, Trump denied involvement because it's so friggin' unpopular. I get it. But if in 6 months this is resolved, it's like Soleimani, it came, it went. Iran is defanged, and the Abraham Accords are expanded. Will you admit that?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. Do you think it was, I'm wrong, I was wrong? No. And so my thing with regard to what you're saying, Drew, is I've learned to sit back and wait it out with Trump.
Maybe you should sit it out a little longer. Because to say that the conflict with Iran is over is literally the most brain dead thing I've heard Jillian say. And she's said a lot of brain dead things. Okay, so let's talk about what happened after the US struck Iran's nuclear sites last summer. Nothing ended, okay? So we struck their sites, and the concern from sane people like Dave Smith, like me, is look, if we strike them, there is a very real possibility that they will strike back and we will be dragged into a hot war with Iran. That's what a logical person would be concerned about. Now, Iran surprised us because they showed tremendous restraint following what Trump did. Rather than go to war with us, they did some BS, strikes on US military bases after telling the US to evacuate the troops there so no one gets killed, in order to provide lip service to their people, make it seem as though they did a response to what the US carried out. They don't want war. They don't want war with the United States. The only thing that prevented a drawn out, devastating regime change war in the US where our soldiers would risk their lives on behalf of Israel, of course. That's what the center of this is. The only thing that prevented it was Iran's restraint. I know that's hard to hear, especially when you're constantly providing cover for a country that has absolutely no constraint and has carried out a genocide in Gaza. But Iran is the country that showed restraint. Okay, but was it over after that? No, of course it wasn't. Because while Trump argued we obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities, what did Benjamin Netanyahu say? No, it's not true. It's not true. They still have enriched uranium. No, it's not true. It's not true. They're doing this. They're doing that. We still got to go in. Which brings us to just last week. What happened last week? Well, I remember being on the show, reading about all the military assets the Trump administration was sending over to that region because a US strike on Iran was imminent amid all of the protests that were going on. Now, what happened after that? Well, we didn't do a strike, luckily. Does that give me some calm? Does that make me think we're never going to strike Iran? No, I think that eventually we probably will strike Iran.
Don't forget, Noble Mobile is saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell? Why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. TYT.com/switch, TYT.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back.
But I do want to talk about the protests first, right? So the protests were the excuse for why the Trump administration was going to carry out these strikes. But we should actually listen to some experts about why the US would want to do a strike, and more importantly, who is behind the protests. They might have started organically, as you're about to hear John Mearsheimer, a political scientist and scholar, say. But what spurred the organic protests? And then what happened after? Let's take a look.
When these people are protesting, right, they're protesting because of the terrible economic conditions. But who played the principal role in creating those terrible economic conditions? It is the United States of America. So that's the first step. Then the second step is we decide at some point that we're going to foment massive protests and we're going to fuel those massive protests. There's a very famous piece that came out in the Jerusalem Post on December 29th that makes it clear that Mossad was deeply involved in what has been happening in Iran. Furthermore, there are comments by President Trump and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo that make it clear that the United States has been involved from the get-go in terms of fueling this crisis.
Wow, gee, why? Why? I mean, I thought we were done with Iran after successfully bombing their nuclear sites and obliterating their so-called nuclear program. So why is the US and Mossad fueling unrest in Iran? I don't know. Could it be that they're trying to spark regime change in Iran? Could it be? Now, look, to be fair, and I do want to be fair to Jillian, she deserves it. She trusts experts, and that is important to do. But if you're wondering who she considers experts to be, well, she's about to tell you. Take a look.
Many times, because I didn't know enough about any of this at the time, which is why I often wanted somebody like you, Dave, or Coleman Hughes, or Scott Jennings to provide the other point of view. Because I was like, I'm not an expert in this. I don't know. I can't refute the things you're saying.
Dave Rubin is an expert? Dave Rubin is an expert? Scott Jennings and Coleman Hughes are both hardcore Zionists. Coleman Hughes does work for the Free Press, so hardly experts. Certainly simps for Israel gets whatever they want, whenever they want. That's for sure. Man, it is embarrassing to call Dave Rubin, though, an expert. Same with the other two, but Dave Rubin in particular stands out. But anyway, none of the three people she listed are foreign policy experts, nor are they political scientists. Mearsheimer, though, is. And so why don't we hear him draw out the rest of this plan for regime change in Iran?
The third step in the process is to foment a massive disinformation campaign. That's to convince everybody in the West that these protests are generated internally, that the United States and Israel have nothing to do with it. This disinformation campaign sends the message inside of Iran that the regime is finished. The protesters are on a roll. Then the fourth step in the process is the United States military, and probably the Israeli military as well, come in once the protests have reached a certain point, and we attack all sorts of critical infrastructure, all sorts of elites inside of Iran, and we deliver the coup de grace. We finish off the regime.
Now, this plot did not work out so well, and we should talk a little bit about why. So Trump both threatened military action against Iran and again built up US military assets in the region, which made it certainly appear as though a strike was imminent just last week. Okay. He ultimately backed down, though, after it became clear that Israel was not ready to withstand an attack from Iran. And you don't have to take my word for it, Jillian. Why don't we go to the Israeli press? It's Israeli, so you'll probably trust it. Report. When he asked Trump, meaning Netanyahu asked Trump, not to strike Iran, Netanyahu said Israel not fully ready to defend itself. So if you are demented enough to think that this is over, maybe you shouldn't be doing political commentary. Maybe you should go back to squatting. But other than that, we could have easily had this conversation. We could have had a debate, and it would have gotten fiery, that's for sure. But I would do my best to engage in a respectful debate. And I totally concede that I have not been respectful in the context of this video. But just to answer your question about whether Anna's gonna apologize to you, how about you apologize to me? Because you were the lead host of the very show you literally walked out on live on air. And if people don't remember, it's because I was critical of Benjamin Netanyahu. Take a look.
Because Charlie Kirk didn't like Netanyahu, just like any warm-blooded American shouldn't. Netanyahu is a bad guy. And he wanted to make it seem like, no, we were all great, we were good, we had a great relationship. Little did we know behind the scenes, there was a lot of pressure toward
ends up being about how do we bash Israel. This is not for me. I'm not interested in this.
Okay,
I love you
know.
guys.
I'm sorry.
Let's be good.
Let's be good about precious Israel. Let the country committing a genocide. Yeah. Okay.
Zero. I think you guys are great. I fundamentally disagree with you about like every show doing this. I'm sorry.
Cool. So can we continue the conversation?
Yeah. Let's.
Okay.
You wanted to do it anyway.
Finish the last topic.
All right.
Wow, okay guys, so again, to clarify, I don't think Israel did it.
I'm sorry, it is not some angelic country, it's a foreign country, and we have the right to be as critical of a foreign country as we want. We have the right to be as critical of our own country as we want.
You were right about one thing, Jillian. This is not for you.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.